All right, well, let's get started and folks can come on in right as we reach 12:31 Eastern. I want to welcome everybody to our next installment of our virtual internship series. We do them every 2 weeks. My name is Danny Rubin. I'm the founder of our company. We're called Reuben. We're joined by my colleague, Mac Dowd, our implementation specialist. And we're delighted to have you for our next session today, all about the world of agriculture. We have two great guests lined up who do, I would say, pretty different things day to day, but they both have a connection to the classroom. How about a quick show of hands, and I'll probably talk about it more as we go. Anybody here in FFA or in any CTSO, really? Anybody FFA or Skills USA? Let us know in the chat, because our Mr. Brosch was a former president of FFA in the state of Maryland, and our Liza Goetz was a former ag teacher and FFA advisor. Is that correct? I have that right?
Yeah.
So very familiar. We have FFA members here. I don't know where you are exactly, but we have some FFA folks in the house. So Genesee Career Institute FFA, there you go.
Right. So
you're among friends, and I really hope that this conversation is useful to all of our students who are joining us today. The first thing I'm going to do, we'll let our guests just hang out for just a moment. I'm going to share my screen, offer some resource to the teachers. I mentioned our next webinar, come back to the group and we'll kick things off. So give me one moment to do a screen share. Let me pull up the first slide. Okay, those of you who have been to our sessions before, you know how we like to kick things off offering resources to teachers that you can use in the classroom after today's conversation. This time we're offering a Google Drive folder of life skill exercises. Raise your hand if you want to teach more life skills, adulting skills to the students before they head out the door. So the lessons we provided are around shaking hands, holding conversations, taking a headshot, signing your name in cursive. Show of hands if you think students should know how to sign their own name before they graduate. Emailing a teacher about a poor grade politely, and learning how to respect someone else's opinion even if you don't agree with it. So free resources in a Google Drive folder that we'd love for you to have. As well, we always give this out to an online presentation checklist with some simple tips on how to deliver effective presentations, also in that Google Drive folder. Okay, so if you would like these resources for the teachers, okay, if you'd like these for the classroom, here's all you have to do. Go to the chat right now, type the word interested and your email address. Interested and your email address. And if you are new to our community, we always ask this. We'd love to have a brief conversation in the next couple of days to say hello, help you make sense of this material, learn what you teach, so we can actually have a human conversation and it's not just one-sided with you watching us today. So if you'd like it, interested in your email address, and then we will reach out for a 5-minute phone call with a calendar invite to say hello and pass it along. And we'll mention this again at the end. Okay, so just, you'll hear it a second time, but thank you for those who have already put their information. We'd love to give it to you. Coming up next, we always have another webinar lined up. And next time we're going into, get ready, video game development. We did this session last school year and it was crazy in here. The chat was going crazy. And so many students came, we are talking to a video game developer for Bethesda Games, which is outside of Washington, DC. And they have a lot of popular games like the Elder Scrolls and Skyrim and Doom, and they're going to talk about making video games. So please join us November 3rd. We'll be putting out emails about it, but put it on the calendar so you'll be sure to join us. If you're watching this on a recording, you can also have the life skill resources that we mentioned. Just send us an email to support@reubeneducation.com and we'll get it to you that way. Finally, everyone who's here today is going to get a certificate for being here. We'll send the certificate tomorrow morning, Thursday morning. So please look out for that in your inbox as proof that you were here. Now, one last thing before we dive in with our guests. I'm going to share my screen again. Here it is. To help the new folks understand this Reuben company that I mentioned, we're the host today of our session, and we provide online curriculum for business communication skills. Teachers, show of hands, how many of your students write emails that look like text messages? Any hands for that? Emails like text messages. So we help students write and speak more professionally. We have a variety of learning units like email etiquette and phone etiquette and life skills. We also do networking and resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, interviews, entrepreneurship communication like sales writing and public relations, fundraising communication, and leadership communication skills. Manager, writing as a manager, writing to clients, report writing, all kinds of communication to help students communicate in the classroom, through CTSO, through student council, for a job, whatever's going on. Writing and speaking skills matter above all, because that's how you're going to break through to that next opportunity. So that's who we are as a company, and you'll hear some of those themes as we go along with our guests today. And with that, I'd love to bring our guests into the conversation. Let me first introduce Liza Goetz. She is in Maryland and runs a really neat flower farm. I want to have her do a brief introduction about what she does, and we'll turn to Chris Brosch, and then we'll get things started. So Liza, go ahead.
So hi guys, my name is Liza Goetz. I have been an ag teacher for the past 12 years. This past June, I became a full-time flower farmer, and our business model is a little unique compared to a traditional florist or farmer. We are actually a combination of both. So we created Wildly Native here on our family farm. I am 4th generation on the farm.
Wow.
That's been handed down through the family. I looked out and always loved growing flowers. My undergraduate degree is in horticulture from Delaware Valley University. And then I taught ag for 12 years, rocked and loved all of the floriculture. And then one day realized that the supply chain really is heavy coming from South America. And so we started to grow a little more and work with some florists and kind of do some things. And now we are a full service florist using predominantly what we grow out in the field.
Wow. Really neat. And we talk a lot about listening skills in our session. Yeah. Everybody, she said she's a blank generation on the family farm. What was that number she used? Blank. What was that number? The what generation? Did anybody catch that number? Can you tell me in the chat what number you heard? There we go. 4th. We talk a lot in our sessions about the power of numbers. Numbers matter, right? You could say, oh, I work on a farm, but when you say 4th generation, it's like, whoa, that's way different, right? It just hits harder. So numbers carry a lot of importance in all of our lives, the numbers that we own. So we talk a lot about owning our numbers. Chris Brosch, tell us your background.
So my name is Chris Brosch, and I run the nutrient management program that's housed at the Delaware Department of Agriculture. The nutrient management program is roughly 20 years old here in the state, and it was done legislatively to regulate the application of fertilizer and manure to agricultural areas in Delaware. There are similar programs of similar age in Maryland and Virginia, among other states. But in those 3 states, the timing was really important because it was a reaction from the government to make sure that farmers were protecting our waterways. Mm-hmm. And in early 1999, I actually started, I think, in 1998. Oops, sorry, I have eco lights in here.
I can tell. It's okay. We can still see it. There we go.
Yeah. There was an outbreak of a pathogen that was killing fish. And at the time, it had been linked to excess nutrients in the water. As it turned out, that isn't quite what caused it, but it was very dangerous to people also. And so my program and other programs in the region, help ensure that our water quality is clean and safe for recreation and for drinking.
Very interesting. And prior to doing all that work, you were the president of FFA in the state of Maryland. Correct?
I was. And I heard you mention Montgomery County earlier. I grew up in Montgomery County, Maryland. So me and my fellow Hornets at Damascus High School actually restarted a chapter after, I believe it was 10 or 12 years hiatus in an urbanizing area. So it was a very unique FFA chapter. Spent a lot of time in floriculture CDEs and horticulture CDEs. The landscape nursery CDE was where I spent a lot of my time and energy, and helped run the greenhouse there. That just turned into an interest in soil and water science, which I took to the University of Maryland and then Virginia Tech. And, just spreading myself thin across the mid-Atlantic, coming to Delaware.
You've touched them all. You've made your rounds. Well, thank you both for explaining your background. I want to go a little bit further into your background. And as I do that, for teachers and students, please go to the Q&A area along the bottom row and start entering your own questions. When you ask your question, put your name and your school, and we'll go through as we go along and we'll ask your questions. So start putting your questions for our guests in the Q&A. All right, and we'll start picking them out. As you do that, I want to share my screen again. And those who have been here before, what do I always do and encourage you to do before you meet somebody new? What's that R word that we always start on this? What's that first thing we do before we step into the interview room or we talk to somebody new, we meet with them? What do we ask them to do? Anybody remember that term? I know we have some folks who've been here before. What we do is we do our, there we go, right before I said it. We do our research. We do our homework. So we've done a little homework on our guests to show you the power, the true power of doing some background before you meet with somebody. So the first thing, we went to the Wildly Native website and I was looking around, I was watching their video and I was reading the staff bios, learning about their services. And I have a question for you, Liza, just trying to understand it. So can people just go through your flower farm and clip out, cut off the flowers they want and bring them to you and purchase them? Does it work like that?
Honestly, no, we're not a pick your own because
Okay.
what we are growing, we're using for weddings, special events, flower
Okay.
bars, and things like that. I've done that a couple times, and my biggest issue with that is the little 3-year-old who doesn't care and just runs around and is like, "Wah!"
Gotta watch out for them.
So, no, if somebody wants to do that, they need to set an appointment.
So how does it work? Like, how does somebody, they would call you and say, we're looking for this or that, and then you would go out and sort of put it together for them?
It depends on what they're looking for. If they want to do a wedding with us, I encourage them to come out and walk up and down the rows.
Okay.
We talk about color, scheme, theme, texture, everything that they want. And I encourage them to come out around the season where they will be getting married. You're not going to find roses in our work. I don't grow them. There's no reason to when what we can grow is so different and so unique. So I encourage them to come out. We have conversations about what they're looking for. They look through our portfolio and they fill out a contact form. And we just kind of have a dynamic conversation from there.
Great. Great. Thank you very much for that. We'll get more into your business in just a minute or so. Let's go to Chris. I was looking on the state website for Delaware, and I'll give you the floor because what you said before was great. So the first thing that caught my eye was cost assistance program to assist in the transport of manure from areas of excess to areas in need. So tell us about what you do with manure in Delaware.
Yeah, I apologize for the very dull government website, but the reason that we have a program is to regulate manure. And so as a result of that, it makes me Delaware's top poop cop. and farmers that grow animals in our state, obviously there are things that come out the south end of northbound animal. We need to make sure that we take care of those resources and they have really good fertility value. And in times like these, where fertilizer is a really volatile, expensive commodity, the value of manure tracks that quite well, and it increases in value. So while there's an economic driver to do the right thing with manure, people that generate it also have to follow certain rules. So one of those rules is if you can't use it, you need to move it. And we help farmers move the manure when they can't use it on their own farm.
Wow. This is one of those things where it's like, I didn't know that was a job, but it is clearly a very important job, right? It's like, you don't realize all the little pieces that go into every day, right? Of just, the work that you do. It's interesting. And it's, probably wouldn't be obvious to students if they're thinking about careers in ag. Was it obvious to you? I mean, how did you fall into this job?
No, it was not obvious to me at all. And frankly, we are also an emergency response team. So if there are animal catastrophes, for example, just 2 weeks ago, we had the unfortunate event where a chicken house burned down with live chickens in it. So obviously those chickens perished, and dealing with the carcasses of those birds is something that we have to respond to.
Wow.
No matter the time of day or day of the week.
Wow.
So it's not a traditional government job, and there are, a lot of various pieces of that require really urgent attention.
Thank you. Maureen, it is a good question, but Mac, please remind folks, please put your questions in the Q&A area, not the chat, because the chat, we can lose things. So throw that in the Q&A and we'll try to get there. So thank you for your backgrounds. I want to go back to Liza for a second. And we were talking about this before we came on, the power of doing some research, learning about somebody's business, learning about somebody's background before you meet with them. Tell us about your recent experience hiring or looking to make a new hire.
So I've definitely grown to the point where I need to hire people that aren't friends and family. So it was the first time that I had reached out outside of that circle and started to work with some strangers. And people were applying. I had used Indeed, and I had set up interviews when people were asking questions and things like that. It's the third question I ask people. Tell me about what you know about Widely Native. And the one girl was like, you do stuff with plants? She clearly had no idea what the business was, what we did, or what we needed. So you need to come prepared.
And because of that, what did you do with that applicant?
She was kicked out.
She was kicked
One job,
out.
12 applications, 6 of them were unprepared. So over half were unprepared. So one position came down to 6 people.
Wow. So let's talk numbers, okay? She had 12 applicants. How many of those applicants were kicked out because they didn't know what the business does? Of those 12, how many got kicked out just on that alone? Who can tell me in the chat? Of the 12, how many were gone? Boom, just like that, because they just came in and they didn't put in any effort, no preparation. 6 of the 12 were gone. So Liza is a former ag teacher. But she's a business owner. Understand, right? You're running a business. This is dollars and cents. This is serious. Also, tell us about how you then took the ones you kept on for on the hiring process. You screened them on social media, right?
Yeah. So it is a business, and people need to understand that flowers are great and they're fun and they're pretty, but it's how I pay my groceries and how I put fuel in my vehicle. So it has to make sense. People need to be committed. They need to be dedicated, and they need to work hard, because there's a lot that goes into this. They have to not be afraid to get dirty. So the third question is, tell me what you know about the business. And once they kind of get through some of those questions, and now we have a pool of 6 people, I took it to my team and I said, how do we pick? How do we figure out who we bring in for our next interviews? What we did is we went to their social media. We looked at their Instagram. We looked at their Facebook. We looked at anything we could find about them. How do they interact with other people? What are they putting out in real life? Because let's face it, all you guys, all the time, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. If your toenail hurts, you're going to post about it. Everybody's posting everywhere. And it's a very real thing. And the 6 went down to 4, because there were 2 that we were like,
wow,
we're not going to interact with that.
I absolutely. Teachers, raise your hand if you appreciate the honesty right now of, if you don't know about the company, you're out. If you look like you're just posting too much and you're all over the place on social media, you're out. This is as real as it gets. Chris, when you're looking to bring someone onto your team or to evaluate somebody for any opportunity, do you appreciate if they know a little bit about your background and about the nature of your job before you meet them?
Yeah. So 2 horror stories, just because Liza gave
Let's do it. Let's lay it out there.
We had one very young professional come in, and she just misunderstood, frankly, what nutrient management was and thought it was a nutrition program for feeding people, which, with a little bit of homework, you could tell the difference. Clearly, that person was not qualified. And then, commenting about Liza doing research on social media, I actually had somebody come in for an interview who was very qualified with a lot of experience, was what I would consider mid-career. And she spent the entire interview talking about her political ideologies, which is irrelevant in the government. I mean, it really doesn't matter what you think about outside of work. So while we had to pursue the interview because that's part of our hiring regulations, It was not a successful interview. And thankfully, we can also set a time limit. We didn't even finish all the questions in time for that person because it was just a bad organizational fit from beginning to end.
Wow.
One thing that we really look for is a good teamwork ethic, looking out for each other, because we're a very small state, a small program, and a small department. So we really need to look out for each other. And I hire environmental scientists, and that's very important because they need to have problem-solving skills and they need to be self-starting. When they're in the field doing inspections, they need to identify something that's right from something that's wrong, and they need to be able to offer advice to a farmer on how to fix it. So those are two important things that I look for in the hiring process.
Liza, I saw you start nodding when he said teamwork is essential. I know you have a small team. It probably works really tightly together. Everybody knows their role and thinking each other's thoughts, right? I mean, tell us about teamwork at your place of business.
So I have 9 employees currently. It's really important that we all communicate well and effectively. If somebody's having a bad day, everybody kind of, I don't want to say picks at them, but like, hey, what's going on? Hey, is everything okay? Those 4 folks for that position, we bumped it down to 2. And then when they came out and we met with them, I hired them both because they both were fantastic.
Wow.
One wants to become a master gardener. The second one has absolutely no ag background. She's been a nanny for years. She's going to school to be a designer. She had the eye. So it wasn't necessarily about the skill set that she had. It was how she interacted. Yep. She had a brilliant cover letter. She wrote a fantastic cover letter. And she wanted the job. It didn't matter that she didn't have the experience.
Love that. Go ahead.
Yeah, she wanted the job and she fit with the group. So we lunch at my kitchen table. We use my house is where we start in the morning. My dogs get excited when they see everybody who comes in. The team has to work and it has to fit, because when you're out and you're setting up a wedding and you've got a really frustrated bride because the caterer's late, or we're panicked because the linens aren't laid and we can't do any work until those linens are laid, we have to be able to stress together and look at each other and say, do this, do this, do this, do this. It has to gel. It has to be right.
I love that. Thank you very much for both of your answers. Let's get to some of our questions from our participants. We have Emmanuel Romero from Linwood Community Adult School. I'll throw this at Chris first. What drew you to the agricultural field and how did you get started?
Yeah, really easy answer. I love growing things. It was kind of a Zen thing, even when I was a kid working in the garden. I grew up in the suburbs, a rapidly urbanizing suburb that used to be, historically a dairy area outside of DC. And so that presented some opportunities in landscaping and in floriculture, and ultimately, got enrolled in plant science curriculum at my high school and just took it from there. When it was time to decide what to study and where to study in college, I just sought out my advisor's help, somebody just like Liza, and she recognized where I found the most interest was in science and specifically soil and plants. And then it just came down to trying the new one. I'd been doing plant science for a while, wanted to learn about soil science to balance things, and just fell even more in love with that.
So you continue to just sort of explore, maybe I like this, maybe I won't, but let me just see. You kind of kept following that path.
I kept taking on the challenges. Even after undergraduate, one of the worst grades I earned in my undergraduate curriculum was in soil physics. So that's what I studied in grad school. I just wanted
Go figure.
I wanted to be the best at it and kept chasing the places that had the biggest obstacle.
Sounds like a former president to me. The challenge just makes you mad, and then you gotta see it.
It's a driving force.
We have a question from Emily Santana, Jorge Mas Canosa Middle School in Miami, Florida. I'll ask Liza this. I'll ask it in a little different way. What are some best practices you've learned about running a business? What are some things that you've learned over the last 4 or 5 years, and now you're doing this full time? You've left the classroom; it's full time. What are some things that you've learned over these first handful of years?
Patience. Be kind to yourself. It's very, very easy to get sucked into all you do is work. That's all you do, because there's always more. There's always more. Setting boundaries and limits is really important. And remember to laugh and have fun. Um,
I like those.
And ask for help when you need it. You give me a seed, give me a plant, I can grow it, I can put it together, I can go get dirty out in the field. If something breaks, if the tractor's down, we can figure that out. But when it comes to sitting down, running QuickBooks, and it comes to all of the financial side, I have very little training in that. And I'm continuing to learn and learn and learn about that because I'm asking questions. It's hard.
I have a question for you. You said QuickBooks. What is QuickBooks?
QuickBooks is the financial management system for payroll and all of your invoicing and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Because little hand notes worked for a long time, but when you start hiring employees and you start having more repetitive and larger business, you have to have a method to track all of that.
Thank you. I asked that question because teachers, raise your hand, and students, if there's something that you hear while you're on the job, or there's a guest speaker, or you're interning, something you don't understand, is it okay to ask the person what something means? Do you think it's okay to say, excuse me, I never heard that term. Can you tell me what it means? And Liza, let me throw it to Liza first. If you have someone learning, you hired them, or they're interning or whatever, and that you say a term that you use all the time, but they don't know it, is it okay if they stop and ask you what something means?
All the time. All the time. I'd rather them stop and ask instead of try to figure out and do it wrong, because that in the long run costs money.
That's right. What do you think, Chris? Is it okay for someone to say, can you explain that to me? Can you show me how to do that? Can you tell me what that means?
I prefer they do. And frankly, one of my most successful employees will frequently ask me what the word I just used means. And it just helps her every day.
That's great. That's great. Okay. This question was in the chat. Now it's in the Q&A as promised. So I have to ask you, Chris, what does manure cost?
Yeah. So
what is the market for manure? How does this work?
Yeah. The going rate here in Delaware, which is predominantly chicken litter coming out of a chicken house used to grow broiler birds, which you would find at any fried chicken restaurant of your choice. That litter is worth on the order of $20 a ton delivered. To a farmer that generates it themselves and then uses it to grow crops, that's going to have a different value. But if you wanted to order some and you had a connection to a farmer that had a truck able to deliver it, you could expect to pay anywhere from $20 to $25 per ton.
Okay. And by the way, this question is from Maureen Danzig. Thank you, Maureen. So just help us understand, $20 a ton, what would be the average purchase in tonnage? Like, how many tons would you be buying? Like, what is the average, price in total?
Yeah. That's pretty easy to answer. Most of the fields here in Delaware, we would need on the order of 2 to 2.5 tons per acre. So if you had a 100-acre field, you'd need 200 to 250 tons. And so you'd be looking at about $4,000 or $5,000 to fertilize that field with chicken litter.
And how long would it, once you fertilize it, how long until you got to do it again?
You would do that every year.
Every year.
Sometimes twice a year. And if the litter does not accurately match the fertility needs for the crop you're trying to grow, for example, corn or soybeans will use all the nitrogen in that litter, but maybe not all the phosphorus. In the following year, you might come back with a commercial nitrogen fertilizer in order to utilize the phosphorus that's been banked in the soil.
So again, everybody, we heard some numbers, right? How much total for 100 acres could you expect to pay for manure? Who heard that number? Put in the chat to me. And while you do that, I'll ask you a question to Liza. Another question from Samantha Kickbush. What is the most difficult flower to grow on your farm?
Hands down, Lisianthus.
What is it called? I'm sorry. Say it again.
It's called Lisianthus. It looks very similar to a rose. The bugs love it. It doesn't like a lot of rain, and it doesn't like a lot of humidity. So it likes it hot and dry. If you don't pick the flowers at the right time, they get all mushy. Yeah, but fantastic in arrangements. So we struggle through.
Okay, so like people want to see them, but it's really hard to maintain them. So you have
Yeah.
to deal with it. What are some of your favorite flowers? I'll just flip it the other way.
I love peonies and irises, and we grow a ton of mint.
Mint. Okay.
And we have over 500 feet of eucalyptus. So if you're having a rough day, you just go out and you rub the eucalyptus and everything's better.
What is that? Tell me about that. What does that mean if you rub eucalyptus?
Eucalyptus, you're probably really familiar with it when you have a cold.
Okay.
When you rub it, it lets off the scent that's similar to like Vicks Vapor Rub.
Okay.
It's a very odoriferous plant. Some people hang it in their shower.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you. And what I'm doing, I want the students to observe that I ask a lot of questions. I think it's so important to be curious just in life. Be curious, ask that next question, look around that corner in an ag context, look under that rock, right? That's how you probably both got into this field. You're like, oh, what's over there? What's over there? What's that look like, right? So we want to encourage students to be thinking in the front of their brain about what can I ask next? What do I not understand? Let's see, we have another question for Liza, a little more local question. My name is Jordan. I go to University of Maryland.
Go Terps.
So go Terps, right? Does your farm provide educational opportunities like field trips?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We
by?
have garden clubs that come out. We have little field trips that come out. We actually have had some teachers out from a local private school who have put together arrangements and then gone and delivered them just as surprises around the community. I mean, we always have people out. There's always something going on. We have goat yoga once in a while too. So it depends on what kind of.
Oh, goat yoga. Okay, so they can certainly visit your website and send a message, and your team can.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
Great. We do have a question. Whatever comfort level you have about this, about median salaries for ag. Do you have any sense in the broader field if certain jobs fetch this salary or other more technical fields fetch X? I'll go to Chris first. Do you have any knowledge of that question, salary range in ag?
So it's really easy to find resources on government salaries. You can Google me and find out what I make. Go for it. Doesn't bother me at all.
Government employee. Yep.
As a manager, the employees that work for me with minimal experience but not fresh out of school can expect to make the mid $40,000 a year salary. Interestingly, for farmers and farmhands, it's usually an hourly rate, and Liza could talk more about it. But what I find really interesting is the USDA has figures for how much farmers pay themselves, which is not something that they do hourly. But they figure that farmers' time is only worth about $10 an hour. At least that was the last I heard, which is wildly inaccurate. You cannot raise a family on that.
No.
I think many of us are familiar with the cost of living. So it's not an arena where you're going to get wealthy, but you can be wealthy in experience. And I meet a lot of great people. I love my job. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And the days at work don't feel like days at work most of the time.
That's the whole game. Liza, do you have anything to add to this salary conversation?
I think there's a couple different perspectives that you can definitely look at it through. I think you have the perspective of, there's layers in ag. Ag is like that proverbial onion. You're always peeling back these different layers. Somebody with no experience is going to obviously come in at a much lower rate. Somebody who has a CPH, a certified professional horticulturist certification, they're going to make more. Somebody who has a horticulture degree, they're going to make more. Somebody who has a lot of experience over a long period of time and years in the industry, they're going to make more. My designer, she's going to make a little bit more because she's putting it together. So I think it depends on your experience, it depends on your education, and it depends on also where you are in the country. Somebody in New York City is going to make maybe a little bit more and it looks great on paper. Wow, they make so much more there.
Right.
But hold on, it costs so much more to live there.
Right.
So you have to look at it apples to apples, not apples and pears.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We're going to hop to a screen share for just a minute. As I mentioned in previous webinars, we always do a little writing session that I think our guests will appreciate, because it's all about helping to tell let me get this open real quick, telling your story as well as you can when you're trying to promote yourself, promote a business, promote a program. We talk in our curriculum about never being vague, right? We've talked a lot about numbers today as we've gone along. So I want to show the students and the teachers, we'll do that. You can do this in your class, or students can do it from their keyboard if they're at their screen. I want you to look at, let's look at this one right here. This sentence, it could be on a resume, or it could be a business, a way to promote a business. Sorry, let me get my little screen out of the way. At Acme Corporation, we sold many microwaves this past year and generated a big profit after all the sales. Now, I want to ask you, where could we put numbers in this sentence? Many microwaves and big profit. Do you see two places where numbers could be inserted into this sentence? What I'd like for you to do is to determine as a group, you can do it as a class even, what number would you replace many and say, you come up with a number. How many microwaves did you sell? And what was the profit? Let's replace many and big with a number of microwaves and an actual dollar amount. Can you put a number of microwaves and a dollar amount in the chat for me? And we're going to continue to underscore why numbers are so important when you're writing your resume, you're promoting your business on your business website, you're promoting the success of an initiative. You have to let people know how successful you are through your numbers. So take a second and let's put some numbers there. And let me ask, I'll ask Liza this question as students are doing it. You know, you're running a business. You're trying to capture new business. You might do a brochure, a flyer, your website. Why is it important to say, you know, how many customers you have, or how much of something you do, or, you know, why do the numbers make a difference when you're trying to impress somebody to hire you?
Simple. It gives you credibility.
Credibility.
If I say we did one wedding last year, people go, oh, okay, well, you know, they just do that thing. But when I say we've done 30 weddings or 40 or 300 over the past 5 years, that lends some credibility, which then gives people confidence in working with you.
Love that. Chris, what do you think about adding numbers to underscore your success as a team for the impact you're making in Delaware?
Yeah, I have to give annual reports frequently, and those are definitely based on numerical metrics. So for instance, I have to report every year the number of acres covered in nutrient management plans in Delaware. I have to manage budgets based on, you know, how much we can spend on programming like manure relocation. And ultimately, a lot of those things boil down to pounds of pollution prevented. And that's something we calculate with complex computer models, which I started to build at the beginning of my career.
Wow. So the numbers help you capture new business. They help, in your case, Chris, they help you to make the case that your team is getting the job done. You deserve future funding. You deserve to keep your office and keep your job, right? I mean, without the numbers, what case would you have? So, and thank you for those who shared. I want to share, Drake said 50K microwaves and $1 million in sales. We have many to 100, big to 1,300. Rachel's class said 200 microwaves, 75% profit. But let's remember, not just to say percentages, but to put an actual dollar amount. So I want you to think about your own resumes, for example. Look at your resume when you have a chance and look where you could insert numbers into your experience instead of just saying worked on a team, held a big event, raised a lot of money. Where could the numbers come in for you? To, as Eliza gave the best word, credibility. Give yourself the credibility because you've done the work, you have the examples, but many times in resumes, for example, we don't think to put our numbers and they're right below the surface and the employer would never know. You know, Liza's evaluating resumes. And if you don't tell her that your numbers, how would she ever know? She would just flip your page, go to the next person. You have to give her a reason to stop and pay attention. And it's often done through our numbers. So that's why we did that. Go ahead.
Your communication needs to be clear in what you're saying. You can't say 7 years of gardening experience, turn in a resume, and you worked as a car salesman for the majority of the time. It has to jive.
Absolutely. And the timeline's got to make sense. And right, all these things have to, because the more questions you have, the less interest you have in getting them in there. You want it to be like, they're a home run. Absolutely. I need to talk to them right now. You can't have any of these like, I don't know. Because like you said, there's a lot of people who apply for these jobs and they're not just going to pick you just because you applied. So
one thing I wanted to add, and I don't mean to pick on Drake at all, because this is a casual conversation, but in a professional presentation, I actually had an employee of mine talk about 50K acres, talking about how much we've done something across the state of Delaware. And that's not a particularly professional way to talk about acres using vernacular like K for thousands. It's really important that, and I told him afterwards, that we need to talk as professionals and discuss things in terms of thousands and not use shorthand like that in a professional presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that comment. And I appreciate, Drake, your participation. This is a learning environment because he's right. We want to make sure that we're not being casual when we're being judged for opportunities, because the littlest thing could send them just in the wrong direction. And we want to keep them with us. Let's end on one last question for both of you. It's anonymous, so I wish I could attribute it, but what is the hardest part of your job? We'll go to Liza first. What's the hardest part?
I think when it's absolutely freezing cold outside, I'm exhausted because I've worked a 12-hour day, 14-hour day, 15-hour day. There's a deadline coming, and it's not a soft deadline like my employer needs me. No, it's like snow is coming, the bulbs have to be in the ground, and this is it. It has to be done. And sometimes having that grit, you've got to have grit and the dig in. And sometimes you just have to push past that exhaustion and be like, you know what? No, I'm getting this done. It doesn't matter what it takes.
Love that. Maybe the wordplay there with Flower Farm to dig in. Maybe that's your next brochure. Okay, that's a freebie. You can have that. There's something there. Chris, go ahead. What's the hardest part of your job?
Yeah, easy answer. It's finding farmers, and I hate to do it. We have an unofficial policy that they need to make a mistake 3 times, and we give them solutions to correct the mistake each time we go out and do an inspection and find something that's not correct. But ultimately, there are some farmers out there for whatever reason that they can't or won't abide by the rules. And when I do have to write a citation, that is the hardest part of my job, because I know it hurts that farmer as much as it hurts me.
Because there aren't the profession is dwindling, and you hate to knock somebody out, because you need them too. You don't want to disqualify somebody, but rules are rules.
Yeah, it's an expensive endeavor. It's not a very profitable industry. So following the rules, should keep you profitable. And ultimately, if you don't, to be fair, we have to exact a toll. So,
wow. Thank you for those answers. I want to do one quick wrap up. I'll share my screen. For those who missed it at the beginning, we have a collection of life skill activities we'd love for you to bring into your classroom for free in a Google Drive folder. Shaking hands, holding conversation, making a headshot, signing your name, corresponding with teachers, learning to respect people's opinions, which we need more and more of that in our country these days. A lot more listening to each other these days. So we'd love to give you that. And also a checklist for how to give effective online presentations, all together in the Google folder. If you missed this at the beginning, please go to the chat right now and type the word interested and your email address, and we will pass this information along. If you are new to our Reuben webinars and the Reuben learning community, we'd love to have a brief phone call in the next couple of days on your calendar to just say hello and learn about your program, help you make sense of these activities in the classroom. So if you missed this offer at the beginning, here it is one more time, and you can throw your email on the word interested in the chat. Lastly, please join us in 2 weeks for our next virtual internship on video game development with a couple people probably from Bethesda Games in the state of Maryland, about how they make some of the biggest games in the world and put it out there and make all the wild things they do in video game creation. And if you missed the session live, you can still have the life skill worksheets. Send us an email to the email address in red. And lastly, we will have a certificate for everyone tomorrow morning So look out for that in your inbox and use that in your portfolios, put it up in the classroom, whatever you'd like to do. So let me back out of here one more time and say a special thanks to our guests. Weren't they great? Can we have a show of hands? It's a virtual applause for our guests today. I thought they were great, gave really honest answers from different perspectives in the field. And I think students, I hope, came away with a really good understanding of what it would be like to do this work. So thank you both very much. I hope we'll see all of you in a couple of weeks for video games. A hard turn from agriculture. That's what we do here. We hop around. So see you in November. Happy Halloween. And thanks again for being here.